Welcome to the 2 Month Review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter at the University of Rochester, in which we take a giant book, we break it down, we talk about it, we have fun. We are reading for this season Doris Lessing's The Golden Notebook. Today we are going up to page 417-ish in the novel. I'm Chad Post from Open Letter Books, joined as always by Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox. How are you doing, Brian?
Fantastically better than I deserve. Thank you.
Excellent. And always, as always, Kaija Straumanis, editor, translator. How are you?
I'm good.
There's nothing. This is true. Like if you ask how people are on a podcast, there is no runway that provides.
Dramatic.
There's
The
nothing.
dramatic pause was great. I like that.
I mean, I thought I'd be real and think about it because it's now 3 p.m. Central Time. So there's a lot of hours that have passed in the day. A lot of stuff could have happened.
That's true. However, I don't know that has. I just finished reading an amazing thing that I can't. It's not available anywhere at this moment, but it might be in the near future. But related to all of our NEA stuff, I have an essay by Curtis White, who was in charge of FC2 during the Jesse Helms uh, debacle that we talked about on our NEA podcast. And he wrote a little remembrance of it. It's so funny and so crazy how how much trouble they got in and how much trouble they caused just through this simple publication of a quote unquote dirty book, to the point that he gets contacted by someone who had helped put together like all the NEA or put together like funding for nonprofit literature, and they're like, how many books do you say are that you thank the NEA for in your publications? He's like, all of them but one. And they're like, but are these all the ones that are funded on your project? He's like, no, I just figured the NEA would like it if we just put their name on everything. He's like, that was a huge fucking mistake. Jesse Helms is very upset. And the reason that Jesse Helms finds out about this book, which I did not know this piece of the story, but he found out about the book Blood of Mugwump, which by Doug Rice, which caused him to read it out loud on the Senate floor and call for the defunding of the NEA, was that there was a review of a book called Chicklet um, in in the Washington Post. And in the Washington Post, they said they're reviewing chicklit post-feminist fiction. It's got a lot of like lesbian sex in it, whatnot. And the reviewer, a novelist, Carolyn C., says the National Endowment for the Arts funded part of this improvised and enterprise, and it is couched in words and concepts that are sure to give Jesse Helms a conniption fit, which then gave Jesse Helms a conniption fit. So good. That's that's where I'm at today. So. Anyways, I guess we should talk about this book because we don't have any good banter, unless we want to talk about the rehearsal. But we read the beginning of Free Women 3, or we read Free Women 3, and then the Black Notebook for the most part. We went a little bit, I asked you guys to go a little bit past what we had announced on our little reading schedule, simply because there's one piece that I think would be really interesting and related to what Brian and I have been talking about or brought up like a few weeks ago, and that Kai's now on board with. But general, I mean, high level bird's eye view. What'd you guys think of this section?
I would really quickly like to ask Brian, are you now in the second half of your broke ass? Have you
I
crossed the
am. It
threshold?
starts at Free Women 2. I don't know where I put my first half of it, but yeah, I'm in the second half. I'm on the back stretch. Feeling good.
I've been thinking about you as closer we get to the halfway mark. I was like, I wonder if this is also a natural break for Ryan's very real physical break.
That's what happens when you buy the cheapest airline ticket possible. And you're only allowed a personal item, not a carry-on item. You got to break big books in half. The zipper was not going to make it. I'll tell you that.
It would have been great if you had taken it and broken it up into like four parts and asked your neighbors if you could store some in their pouches also.
Yeah.
Oh
I'm
my God.
curious, was this book, was it controversial when it was released? Do you know? Have you read anything about its original release?
There's a review in the New York Times that I read that was kind of just dismissive or like
Yeah.
mixed at best. But other than that, I don't know that it was, I haven't seen a lot of stuff that are like necessarily controversial.
Because this
Although
is
it seems to focus
early,
on the
like
middle
it's
women.
early mid 60s, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And because I'm noticing, I wouldn't like consider this. I just think for the time, you would think that Anna would be considered a promiscuous protagonist for that time. And I'm wondering if that would have been controversial or not. The fact that someone has more than two sexual partners in a book, right? Because you can always have you can be like I'll compare it to like French Lieutenant's Woman, where someone can sleep with somebody else, and it's like, oh, okay, well, like it's an affair. But for someone to have, I don't know, we're on at this point, like lover number four or five or six or something like that, like is
Maybe.
yeah, was that a big deal? Was that controversial? And then for one of the lovers to be homosexual or bisexual, is that going to be controversial? I'm wondering for
62.
1962.
I mean, it sounds like it from the character, from Anna's standpoint, that there is controversy to it, or if it's not controversy, it's at least a very apparent level of discomfort. But I mean, she's writing, it's published in 62, but it's being written about the mid to late 50s.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like almost a decade removed. If I guess a better question is, yeah, well, not a better question, but is what you're saying is like, was the 1950s, is this what everybody was doing in England? Like there's the theater, there's the theater, there's women being publishers and writers and more independent and having jobs outside the home. Um, and I mean, it makes me think of Marion where, and this is really jumping ahead, but where Marion is basically idolizing Anna as this like independent, sexually free woman. And Anna's like, it's not like that. And Marion just kind of like willfully ignores that. Um,
I like how she just gets her wasted. She's like, I've been sober for weeks. And she's like, you want a whiskey? You want two? How about another? That is a
I mean,
perfect.
I don't know. I kind of feel like my sense is that that was normal, that everyone's going to have their opinions, but my sense was that in their character, in their circle, it is par for the course, and that as a literature, it was also, I mean, it keeps going back to how it was received as like a feminist, a pro-feminist. I don't know. I'm not answering the question. I read it as normal and as something that would be accepted as normal for the time. But I
It
had
feels like for the American literary landscape, it would be controversial
Yeah, I
in the
think so too.
60s.
those horny Brits.
Because like
Well, the Brits are okay with the bisexual homosexuality
if
aspect.
it's Jack Kerouac and Beat Generation, like that's cool, that's fine, maybe. Just, we don't want the kids reading it too much.
Right.
But if it's a smart woman that's doing this, I don't know about that. Like I was okay with a little bit of like Mrs. Dalloway, a little bit. She can kind of hang out with some of these characters, but I don't know about that. Like I could see it doesn't feel like it, I wouldn't say nothing. It doesn't feel controversial to me at all, but when I try to place it at the time when it would be for a North American audience, I could see it being like, I don't know, be very liberating or very scary, depending on if you're more conservative in nature or more open in nature. I could see it really being polarizing, a polarizing piece of literature, and particularly this section. When we're introduced to Ronnie and is it Ivor? I don't remember.
Yeah, it's an interesting
I want to say
yeah,
I want to say Igor, but it's like Ivor
yeah,
or
I think
Or
Ivor. I would say
Okay,
Ivor
okay.
or Ivor. Yeah,
Ivor.
it's
Okay.
a very curious choice of name.
Yeah.
yeah,
But
and
I just bring that up because of the introduction of a previous fling who's bisexual. Like that seems like it would be something that really pushes the envelope for the time.
Wait, which fling is that?
I got the sense that her and Ivor had something going on.
Oh, no, I don't think
I
so.
didn't
I
think
think
Aaron
I
Ivor
think he's
did.
just a tenant.
Oh, okay.
I think
Yeah.
he's just yeah. I thought so too.
There was like a we can get into it more when we get to that section, but there was like a discomfort that I was sensing with the character
Yeah, for sure.
beyond just a tenant. But I could be reading it completely wrong, which is also common for me.
I took that as Anna's discomfort with homosexuality.
Yeah, which is a little
Ah,
surprising to read, but like,
Yeah.
but was
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, I mean, that's not unusual for that point in time, I suppose. But also, like, I was like, ooh, that's like when you're like everything's like cool on your politics and whatnot until that moment, and then it turns
Yeah. Like
little
as
bit.
long as it's not in your house, you're okay with it.
Yeah, because she implies, like Anna says, so just to frame this for everyone, in the Free Women section, there's a few different pieces to it. One piece is that Ronnie, who is Ivor's lover, has moved in and they're staying in the same bedroom and she's not making a big deal out of it. Ivor is helping out a lot with Janet and taking care of Janet, but Ronnie's like taking Anna's creams and
Fuck no,
lotions.
which that instant death. I don't care what sexuality you identify as, what gender identity, you're going through any other person's toiletries, instant death. You don't fucking do that.
And she's like, and
so
she,
wait, when you go to someone's bathroom, you don't take their cotton swabs, their
I try
Q-tip,
everything.
and just put them through your ear and put them
That's
back
different.
and put
That's
them back.
different.
No.
That's different.
Little
That's a cotton
swabs.
swab. The dental as long, yeah, that I feel like that's different. But if you're uncapping people's serums and lotions.
The last time I was at your guys' house, I used that under eye cream. It was wonderful. I really liked it with the
Also
circles and the
different
puffiness.
because I left that out on purpose, Brian.
Okay,
You've never looked
okay.
better though. So glad you took that hint.
100%. So she does then say something about like related to what we're saying that she's like, well, Janet's probably gonna be okay, even if she's hearing these two guys fuck in this room, blah blah. And there's like this dis-ease with like their sexuality, which is uncomfortable as a 2025 reader to read. Because but it is of that time. And like what you're saying, Brian, I'm sure of that time, this book was controversial. The Kinsey report comes out in 54. So that's not that many years before this. And like
Yeah.
the general perception is that women are frigid and not capable of having orgasms and so on and so forth. The taking of lovers thing from like a male point of view is always there. I'm certain that like in French literature, this is would be less like shocking or whatever, but like the freedom of it and the free women part of it, I mean, it's right on the cusp of where things are starting to change in the 60s and the whole attitude towards stuff, but it is on that cusp still. So you're probably right. The New York Times review of it is not entirely positive. It's got this part of like basically it says at the beginning she bites off only one thing that she doesn't properly chew. Though her dissection of British communism, which is in part of each of her characters, past or present, is clear-headed and most thorough, certain passages of lumpen politics lie soggy and undigested. Then she says at the end, the reviewer is oh wait, where'd it go? I thought it was right there. The reviewer is Ernest Buckler says the book is too long. Handle feelings at such length and at such bowstring pitch, and they tend to go fetid. But however overwrought Anna's sensibility sometimes is, Mrs. Lessing points such powerful significance as therefrom that, in comparison, many other highly touted novels dealing with man's acceptance or defiance of his fate seem picayune indeed. I don't know what all that means in the end, but it feels pretty half-hearted in terms of praise. But
Which is,
I would bet it would be controversial.
yeah, I mean, like anything a woman is doing.
So yeah, and especially outside of like they're kind of I mean the one thing that kind of like she does play with is that they're constantly wanting to get married.
Yeah.
And she's saying like she wants to be married, and that would be like a kind of nod towards the 50s establishment, I suppose.
Mhm.
But she is living on her own with a boarder, with a gay boarder who has his boyfriend living there. That seems, you know, unique in that way. And that she's professional, that she has money from like her success. Again, we're assuming all of this is real. The other parts of this first free women section though are that Tommy is blind. He did not die. We were left with a cliffhanger when he shoots himself. Does not die, but he goes blind. Which then reminded me of his sort of, and he's like now wizened and sort of like spitting truths at people and like getting married and involved in politics and being all like wannabe sage and like whatever and very uncomfortable. Like I think this kid sounds like a prick. Like I would not want to be around him in any way. But it reminds me of that Greek, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm gonna see if I can figure out how to pronounce it really quick. But Tiresias, the
Sure.
blind prophet. Tiresias, I think is right. Um, acts as a blind prophet, appears in many, many plays, is in the Odyssey, I believe, and has some clairvoyance, blah, 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 blah. Is also in The Wasteland, and if I remember right, is transformed from a male into a female, which seems relevant to this particular novel as well. But that came to mind in terms of like someone blind is sort of like being not clairvoyant, like sort of more perceptive than they were prior to that. He also is now 21. So our time thing from last week where things are in the past and whatnot, we get part of our diary entries are from 54, I believe, or 56. But he's now older than he was at the beginning by at least 3 years.
Yeah.
So a lot of time has passed. Yeah, 55 is when the notebooks are from. So we are into 57, 58 in the actual in the free women sections, and everything in the notebooks are still a few years behind that.
Two interesting things that I noticed with this part with Tommy at the beginning of Freeman 3 um, was um, right at the beginning. Isn't it odd, Anna? He's been hovering between life and death. Now he's going to live. It seems impossible he shouldn't. But if he had died, then I suppose we'd have felt it was inevitable too. Like this, again, like this, I don't know.
Either way would
He's
make total
alive. He should totally be alive.
Yeah.
Although if he died, like he totally should have died. Like it's
it
just
totally
it's
tracks.
such a weird. Everything is in this weird space of like things
Yeah.
are falling apart, things are broken. I I don't know. There's like I don't know what's up. I don't know what's down. Sure, like everything's like shrug and like yeah. And
Yeah.
then when she comes to see him, just a couple of pages later, he goes, Anna, you were very kind to come and take pity on me, but I'm not at all bored. I like being alone.
Yeah.
So like this other idea of like, dude, we totally messed you up. I feel like this is probably my fault. I should have said something different to you, and maybe this wouldn't have happened. I feel really guilty, but he's like, I'm cool.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
I don't need you.
Yeah. And it
Which
starts to get
again is like
into,
so alienating, right?
yeah. And then it starts to get into later where he becomes, I mean, it starts to seem very calculating. Like Chad is saying, it makes like it's very uncomfortable and discomforting where like you start to sort of I think we start to sort of see that he really is manipulating and he's like trapping his mother. She's a prisoner. They're all sort of prisoners by his machinations, whether they're intentional or not. Um, but he gets kind of creepy.
Yeah, the two-part side mark that relate to that are on 361, where Molly and Anna are there, and they're like, there they sat, thinking in spite of themselves how the mutilated boy just below them, who is now the center of the house, dominating it, conscious of everything that went on in it, a blind but all conscious presence. And then on the next page, they're like, uh, he knows that I'm feeling like this, so you're going on about him, and Molly says he's happy, Anna. Yes. Now he's out at last. They both felt easier. He's happy for the first time in his life. That's what's so terrible. You can see it in how he moves and talks. He's all of one piece for the first time in his life. Molly gasped in horror at her own words, hearing what she had said, all in one piece, and matching them against the truth of that mutilation.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
like as someone whose mother has a 19-year-old cat who in the last 2 years has lost all sense of hearing, that cat used to be skittish and terrified, and now that this cat can no longer hear, it is so happy. It just chills out. It walks around, nothing startles it. So I get it.
I'm just surprised he didn't become Daredevil.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's a lot of pages left, Chad.
Tommy
I,
becomes Daredevil. That would be the
I don't
best.
think Tommy has enough ambition to care one way or the other about the.
Although he does also like get into the
Prison letters.
the prison lessers. That's what I was gonna say. Is like he gets Marion involved in like politics and like explaining politics to her, and she's like instead of drinking is now like reading these papers, and he's sort of like but it seems like very simplistic and like yes, yes, here what you can do is write a letter to this like unfairly jailed black African I think protester. I forget what his actual quote unquote crime is inside of here, and she's like, okay. And then she like goes to Anna, is like, what's his address? And she's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you're gonna write a letter that's gonna make you feel better? They're never gonna get it. It's not gonna accomplish anything. Like, this is like posting like the black square on Instagram sort of vibe, but
Yeah.
1960s style. Like, okay, here's you can just write Northern Prison. Like, fuck, it doesn't
Good
matter,
luck.
Marion. Like, loser. Like, your idea is not gonna work.
And that's
Um,
another thing that Tommy is manipulating is Marion and his dad's relationships. And through Marion starting to try to manipulate Anna. I don't trust this kid.
kid's sketchy.
He's
He
so
also
scared.
We also do get the part that I think you alluded to in like maybe the first or second episode, Kaya, where Anna goes to the office to see Richard and to see Tommy's dad, Molly's ex-husband, and all of his like wealth and power. And he's kind of a prick and like very much like uh trying to dominate her and tries to like kind of recount like their near affair that they had at one point in time and tries to imply that even though at the same time he's like, well, I gotta divorce Marion and marry my secretary outside the door. She's not gonna wait forever. You know, she's 23 and I'm like almost 50. Like, you just can't wait on these things. Got to make this happen. Like, get Marion out and wants Marion and Tommy to go on a cruise, uh, on a vacation alone to like go to various places, which also feels a little sexually weird. Um,
Yeah.
like as if he is like foisting Marion off on his son, which is
Yeah.
odd. But and
Well,
then and Anna's like gets called into the trap, of which I think a large part of this book also we were talking about like her being outside of like the norms and whatnot, is the idea that there are all these like scripts that you're supposed to follow. You're supposed to like get married at this point in time. In some ways, Richard's script is you have an affair with your secretary, you like neglect your family, you do things this way. Molly is like an actress who like goes off and like has her year abroad. Like they're all following like certain scripts, and Anna's like he brought me here just so I could get pissed and yell at him. And I fell into the trap and made fun of him and said the insults that I was gonna say. Like, you know, I fell for it essentially. And that is like that tension in the book of trying to not be part of like the socially accepted script. Don't always try and get married, you know, live for your own intellectual pursuits. And yet at the same time, like the with the communists, they keep just getting trapped back into like, well, this is the party line. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to say.
yeah. Which do you can either of you identify any free women in this book so far? We're on page 4, 426. Any free women?
I
Anybody?
I think the title's a joke. I think it's supposed to be a joke.
It's that British humor.
Yeah,
Rye.
yeah. No, there are no free women.
No, absolutely not. I don't think so. Unless maybe Mary Rose, because she doesn't really do anything. She just like is around. But she's trapped by like the death of her brother, and she's like stunted emotionally because of that.
Yes.
This is
That part.
also for anyone listening to this for the first time for whatever reason. Mary Rose is part of the Black Notebook, which is Anna telling the real story that led to the creation of her novel. There are too many layers to this onion at times, like to talk about it. Like as if Mary Rose is like a real person, but I don't know if she is.
That do you can we talk about that section with the pigeons and all the insects?
Yeah, is there
I think that's
anything else from the free person thing?
I
The
mean,
the other thing that I had marked that I thought was like sort of important and ties into the beginning of the whatchamacallit, the introduction that she gives or that she wrote that we really liked is the part where on page 373 she's thinking if someone cracks up, what does that mean? At what point does a person about to follow the pieces say, I'm cracking up? And if I were to crack up, what form would it take? She shut her eyes, seeing the glare of the light on her lids, feeling the pressure of bodies, smelling sweat and dirt, and was conscious of Anna reduced to a tight knot of determination somewhere in her stomach. Anna, Anna, I am Anna, she kept repeating. In any way, I can't be ill or give way because of Janet. I could vanish from the world tomorrow, and it wouldn't matter to anyone except Janet. But then what am I, Anna? Something that is necessary to Janet. But that's terrible, she thought, her fear becoming worse. That's bad for Janet. So try again. Who am I, Anna? Now she did not think of Janet, but shut her out. Instead, she thought of her room, long, white, subdued, with the colored notebooks on the trestle table. She saw herself, Anna, seated on the music stool, writing, making an entry in one book, then ruling it off or crossing it out. She saw the pages patterned with different kinds of writing, divided, bracketed, broken. She felt the swaying nausea. And then saw Tommy, not herself, standing with his lips pursed in concentration, turning the pages of her orderly notebooks. So this is where she's on the train, saying that she's on the underground, saying, knowing that she's in a state of near collapse, sort of like losing her shit. And also, once again, ends this little like reverie of like, who am I? I'm falling apart. Do you know when you're falling apart? What am I? Who am I actually? I'm these notebooks that are there, and a man standing there reading them is then becomes who she is. So again,
Yeah.
very much that part. I don't, the other parts,
Um,
here, go on, sorry.
no, you're fine. Really quickly, the just because you read this page, but you mentioned this like Greek character at the beginning, like that's kind of what Tommy could represent. But did either of you feel like this specific underground section could have been kind of a nod to Anna Karenina?
Or a trip through Hades, or a trip to
I mean,
across
sure.
River Styx.
But a woman having a breakdown in front of subways or
Named
on a
Anna.
subway named Anna. Yeah, that's pretty heavy-handed.
Anna just launches straight into
Yeah.
the train. Just
There,
she never gets to go underground. She only gets to stay above ground, getting run over.
oh, that's true. I mean, there's so much of like different types of women being terrorized in different ways by men of all sorts. Like Marion is like Molly and Anna are kind of being terrorized by Tommy, I think. Marion, I would say she is sort of being terrorized, but I don't think she realizes it. I mean, Anna's renter and his lover terrorizing her. Like there's no reprieve. And then Anna projecting onto Janet of like, well, like she'll be fine, right? She'll be fine because I know what's happening. I back on 384, I really loved all the all the journalistic and kind of newspaper nods, like the reviews in this section that Anna's reading of
Mm-hmm.
Frontiers of War, which I think are super funny. And the review you read from New York Times kind of sounds like it. But 384, I loved that part where Marion is like just regurgitating all this stuff from the news and she's like, it's a continent in chains. Well, isn't it? And Anna's like, well, that's either from this newspaper or that newspaper. And then everything that Marion spits out, Anna's just like, it's probably from that, or like that's another thing. Like I love the intelligence, I guess, of being able to just be like, this person's just, she's not thinking it, she's just saying it.
Yeah, yeah.
Exciting to her.
That's near where my line of the week is, which I'm marking so I don't.
Ooh, sorry.
Um, So yes, I don't know if there's anything else on the free women part. There is, yeah, that's probably the Tiresias thing, and the your underground reminded me of like when you say the Anacrina thing or like the river Styx is that she goes underground, sees this creepy old man who's like harassing her, and then she kind of forgets who she is, which is part of that like crossing. Is it the river? I said Styx, but is it the river Leith? I'm mixing up all my myths right now. So whoever's listening, I know you're pissed that I can't recall anything. I'm an idiot, but there we are. I don't know. I kind of remember the vague outlines, but not all the names of people's stuff. Someone else, Brian, you usually save me on this, but you know all these things.
Sure.
You know all the
I'm waiting.
knowledge.
I'm waiting for us to get to dead pigeons.
Let's do pigeons. I'm done with this section.
Please tell me you have a recipe for pie, Brian.
Oh, I don't. I don't.
Sounds like the
You,
grossest thing ever.
I usually eat that with my head under a napkin, and you stuff the whole thing in your mouth and some weird.
Like a cartoon.
Yeah. No, it's supposed to be some fine dining thing where you eat like a squab or a baby pigeon under a napkin.
Really?
Yeah.
Why are they particularly juicy?
I think it's just like you're doing such a carnal, savage act. You want to hide it because it
Okay.
wouldn't be appropriate or the decorum would be bad.
Huh.
So I'm curious, like, so we get this November 11th, 1955. and it's a fat domestic London pigeon. Uh, and some dude just like punts it apparently
Which I love.
because it doesn't fly.
Never have they not flown away.
They always fly away.
So I know this was where was the setting of this little episode?
It was just on the street.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
but
assume
it
so.
is it's in Rhodesia?
Oh no, I
No,
thought that
it's
this was in
London.
London.
Okay,
Yeah. Today
got
on
it.
the pavement, a fat domestic London pigeon waddling among the boots and shoes of people hurrying for a bus.
Okay, because I wasn't
Just
sure like is this taking place in London or does it look like a pigeon that was from London that you'd see in London? I was slightly confused by that, but okay.
I assume it was London because the RSPCA would be a London thing, not a
Yeah,
Rhodesia, right?
yeah. All right.
yeah.
So dude punts a pigeon, like its head goes flying off or whatever. A lady, a lady freaks out about it and is like, I don't know, sorry. Like, does that not feel like insanely allegorical coming after Free Women 3? Which I'm having the hardest time saying Free Women 3. Uh, it's messing me up. If I had like be a sobriety checkpoint question, can, everybody would fail.
Alphabet backwards. Yes.
And what
So
type
what
of
do you,
allegory are you seeing?
yeah.
Well, it just
Who's
it
the pigeon?
it feels kind of strangely allegorical, and then it ends with the angry woman, the efficient man, the corpse, and a few bystand. Like it, very like reduced down to you are X, you are Y, you are Z. Um, and it's used to go to the 12th of November, where and it doesn't have a date with it, but I dreamed of the pigeon, and then you get people shooting pigeons
And
and or birds in Rhodesia. But it made me think of with um, mental breakdowns, things falling apart, Tommy having a traumatic head wound. Um, what are the responsibilities? What do you do with that when you see like I can see parallels between this thing that took place. Like I don't know. I thought like if you give the kid a little shove, he's gonna like go fly off, and it's like, well, no, you killed him,
yeah,
like
I see what
right?
you're saying now.
You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying? And then like someone's screaming, and like the people are like, well, what are you screaming about? It's just a pigeon. Sometimes they fly, sometimes they don't. What are you supposed to do about it? Like, I feel like this little story is kind of like wrapping up a little bit of what we just experienced with the relationships that are taking outside of the notebook
Hmm.
with Tommy and Richard and Anna.
Although chronologically, we'd have to be adding that on because this event would take is written before
Yeah.
Tommy exists. But I agree with you that that does seem, or it could be. I mean, it could be anyone. Like
Yeah,
there's
but just the
like
way they're
like a
juxtaposed, it
yeah.
was like it was very aha, like it really like flashed for me. Why is this juxtaposed right after all this stuff with like with Tommy and then like things falling apart and how everybody's dealing with it in their own way. You get this little side story that seemingly has nothing to do with anything.
Except
Uh,
that
Yeah.
it connects to them shooting the pigeons in
yeah,
this in Rhodesia, right? As
yeah.
like that's that free association segue, but it also like could be Ronnie as the pigeon. He's not doing anything. He's borrowing creams. Okay, that's not nice.
He's,
Blah, blah.
he's
But like
fucking
he's just hanging out
stealing
there, and she
precious
like
drops.
gets him out.
Yeah,
He
like
didn't
puts
like
them
we
out.
find out that he can't find anywhere else. Like his other like sugar daddies don't want to put him up, so he ends up living on his own, like a couple blocks away, with Ivor paying for him as a kept man.
Hmm.
And I mean, he aside from stealing the creams, doesn't seem to really be doing anything. He's just like he's a little bit malicious towards her and makes fun of her. The way that you would make fun of a landlady, I think more or less, it's not nice, but it doesn't seem like worth like get the fuck out of my house. It's not
I
like
think
that scene in
most,
I think
Friendship.
but
it 100% seems worth get the fuck out of my house.
I see it as less like homophobic, and it feels like it's more illustrating her like her falling apart
Yeah.
because like I think she would normally be like more comfortable around a bohemian lifestyle.
I mean, there's The
as an
guy,
artist and in
yeah,
London and stuff like that. And then she can't even feel like she wants to feel comfortable in her home and she can't.
yeah.
And so she needs to get this out of here. Like, get out of here. Like, and like touching my cream is like the perfect excuse. Like I'm throwing like put you out. Um, and then she feels like I was kind of a bitch for doing that. I feel like a bitch for doing that. Damn, like she has remorse about it. But I think it's just illustrating how everything is falling apart and everything there is no comfort. Like I'm not writing. My writing doesn't feel good. Like my life doesn't feel good. I'm probably responsible for to some degree for Tommy shooting himself in the face. Like just not yeah.
Not
And
funny.
then Captain Kimono is using my hand like my body cream. Uh,
Captain Kimono.
and he makes vomiting noises when thinking about sweaty breasts. It's like just get out of
Yeah.
my house.
Yeah. I saw like I made that note about like feeling so like I read it,
Ronnie's enjoying life.
but he's also terrified
Correct.
because
But
he knows what's at stake. Like I read it as well from Anna's perspective. Like she is empathetic. Um but I also read it as like part of that break. Like it's just another set of males taking advantage of her.
Two things I was gonna say
And
with this.
I
Brian, you mentioned the falling apart thing, but also like she doesn't have a role. She's looking to find a space, but she doesn't have a space. Like
yeah,
she doesn't have that narrative. So maybe she is the free woman in that sense. The other thing is that a lot of this, like we get like her
free
reaction
by meaning like untethered.
untethered, like that, not stuck,
Yeah,
not boxed in,
yeah,
not free in terms of like liberated,
yeah,
which would be a wholly different word, right? Liberated women versus free women.
sure.
Um, but they're also like the writing on this, like we see her perspective, we see all these things, there's all these notebooks, but in some ways it's still like a weirdly like cryptic text. Like it doesn't heavy-handedly explain people's emotions. They're just sort of like reacting to and talking about, but not in like this pure interiority of ways that and maybe I like half expect from the book in some sense. I don't know if that's making a lot of like if that's very coherent, but it's just sort of sense I have of like we're interpreting these things slightly differently over and over and over again.
yeah.
Part of it is that it's not like enforcing one particular like emotion or whatnot or place. And it's also it is this book is remarkably fragmented. Like the time things are fucked up. Like trying to figure out and put your place in like all those names that we talked about last week. Everything's like so hard in some ways to like keep it right because it is just breaking and it's broken into all these various like facets and moments and not just like structurally, but like even within itself, it just like kind of has these little dots of occurrences.
Yeah. I want to say further to Brian's the allegory of the pigeon. I mean, I think pigeons are a pretty classic, like one man's trash is another man's treasure type of thing. Like pigeons and doves are essentially the same. In London, a pigeon is a dirty street bird. In Africa, it's like
Delicacy.
borderline delicacy, right? Like to make this pie. Um, so I think, similarly, like if you take Ronnie as the example to that, um, I mean, women homosexuals in this time probably feeling pretty outcast, but in another setting, in another country, another time, they are glorified and rightfully so and taken care of or they mean something, they're worth something. So I think that's like a very literary commentary on the perceived worth of a thing.
Tyrese
Like
is
in London, it's good enough to take a kick at, and people don't really feel bad for it. In Africa, it's good enough to eat.
Yep. Um, I was just looking up.
Fucking bugs.
Okay, so yeah, so bugs are fucking. Bugs are getting
So much,
there's a lot of
which
bugs.
is like I read that. So all these insects all over the place. getting it on, and they just walk into it, and they being Paul, Mary Rose, Billy, Anna, and is it Jimmy, Johnny? What's the
Jimmy.
one's the puppy dog?
Jimmy.
Jimmy, go to get these pigeons for Mrs. Boothby, and they walk into just an insect orgy.
So this is
Um,
Black Notebook back in Rhodesia, the sources part of her novel.
yeah. And I know I'm jumping the gun and I'm kind of taking your rudder away, Chad, but at the top of page 398, it talks about the insects fornicating, and it says, um, but in thousands, crude green and crude red with the black blank eyes staring, they were absurd, obscene, and above all, the very emblem of stupidity. Um, and I think that is a commentary on the perception of sex and sexuality as sex as an act in this book of like the more you see it, the more you're like, this is just kind of silly. Why are we so sensitive to it?
Interesting.
I think it's a great antithesis to the sections that take place in London because there's a cluster there's a cacophony of noise and there's this claustrophobic sense and this chaos that's in the city, and then the reaction isn't pleasant. It's not good. It's yeah, it's like stress and breaking apart and worry. And then here you're getting this blast of noise, but it was grotesque and we were not so much embarrassed as awed. We stood laughing, but our laughter was too loud in every direction. All around us were insects coupling. It's it's a different kind of noise, but it's freeing and it's fun and you can roll with it and have like it's almost liberating in a sense. And so you're getting like
Yeah.
in the city, you're getting this noise that's collapsing and crushing your world. And in Rhodesia, you're getting this noise that just expands and goes like forever. And I think it's this really like kind of I don't know with a lot that's happening here. There's another parallel as we're jumping between notebooks and parts of the self. But
Yeah, that also seems to relate to one of the big sections I marked in this Black Notebook part is when Paul who's can shoot every pigeon misses like one time. Like Jesus, I never shot a gun, but I assume that's more difficult than it sounds. Or than
Pigeons sound fucking stupid too.
Yeah, pigeons do seem pretty fucking stupid. But then he starts talking about looking at things objectively and talking to Comrade Villy. And he's like, consider something. This country is larger than Spain. It contains 1.5 billion blacks, if one may mention them at all, and 100,000 whites. That in itself is a thought which demands 2 minutes silence. And what do we see? One might imagine, one would have every excuse for imagining, despite what you say, Comrade Villy, that this insignificant handful of sand on the beaches of time, not bad, that image, unoriginal, but always apt. This million and a little over a half people exist in this pretty piece of God's earth solely in order to make each other miserable. And then he picked up his Billy picks up his book again and starts paying attention to that, not talking. It says, Comrade Billy, let your eyes follow the print, but let the ears of your soul listen. For the facts, that there's enough food here for everyone. Enough materials for houses for everyone. Enough talent, though admittedly so well hidden under bushels at the moment that nothing but the most generous eye could perceive it. Enough talent, I say, to create light where now darkness exists. And Billy's like, what do you deduce? And he's like, nothing. I'm struck by a blinding light, which is like a Paul Saul sort of reference, I would assume. And then he says, but what you say is true about the whole world. He's like, yes, don't you admit that there's something about a principle of destruction that you've not admitted to in your philosophy? So part of that, like going back to killing the bird, destroying, like everything keeps getting destroyed. But part of this is that there's no way to like have a different world unless you destroy the one that's here. Like the fact that there is like so few whites that are repressing so many blacks in a area where there is abundant natural resources. This is like always part of like kind of the socialist parody sort of books is that we're not strapped for resources. They're created into like limited and like we create scarcity in order for capitalism to succeed and people to make money, but you could change that, but you have to destroy everything first. And so Anna started destroying things. Everyone started destroying things are being destroyed as well as like the idea of falling apart. There's
What
also
was the part with the anteater and the beetle?
like
I think that ties in with that thread. I don't remember exactly what that was
Absolutely.
though.
Absolutely.
I'm all confusing on it because I read half of this on my Kindle because I was sick in bed and half in the actual
Yeah.
book. So, and the page numbers do not line up at all. So I'm
Um,
not sure, but it is in that same section where she's
413,
poking around.
414.
Okay.
And it ends with Jimmy saying, but who should, oh, Paul saying, the moral is, said Paul, that none but natural enemies should engage. And Jimmy hits back with, but who should decide which are natural enemies and which are not?
Mhm. Just
Yeah.
the parade of corpses in this section.
Yeah.
Like they're shooting the birds and just going and picking up these bloody masses.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not the enemy, but they're a resource, I suppose. But then it gets to the part that I wanted you guys to read past. So that's where we technically stopped. We are going to stop on page 117 is what it says in our little thing, in which where we would have ended is that under a section under money.
Pornography is the true journalism of the 50s. Is that what you
Oh
would have thought
yeah.
there?
There you go.
There
It's
it is.
perfect. That's where now we can segue into like the vegetable porn that I found out yesterday. That's a I don't even need to go into it. If you're listening, you can figure it out. Just 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 Google vegetable priest porn. Erotica, sorry, erotica. But yeah, so she gets a letter asking for a story or portions of your journal. She's like, that seems silly. So she writes this thing that's very,
Who would ever novelize journals
yeah,
or
exactly.
notebooks? That is dumb.
What a terrible idea. And so then she
Dude,
does the thing.
she's got a great sense of humor. I feel like I really hope people don't miss that when they read this and take it too serious.
Yeah.
The few reviews I see take it very serious. I still have to
Yeah,
listen to that one podcast, but the podcast
she is.
description is like serious as all
I get
get.
the sense she is having so much fun writing this.
She
But
must
I
because
don't.
she's creating so much. But yeah, so this could be again a synecdoche of this book is that then she creates a fake journal, which in a fake journal by Doris Lessing, but even within the context of this book, maybe a fake journal. It's all like these layers to it. And then the part where she came to know the young American James Shafter. So James shows up. This would be we don't have a date on this section at all.
No, this was very confusing.
So when the fuck does this happen? She meets this guy. He knows people there. They sort of like then kind of go on to make to sort of punk all these journals and all these writing places by creating materials that are like not real. So the instance that like there's a copy of a short story written by James Shafter after being asked to review a dozen novels.
I hate his writing, by the way. That's my my review is you suck, James. Go away.
Well, I think it's so intentional that this is so offensively bad. So within this section, she's met this guy, she has lunch with these people. They're like, hey, we should make a play of your book. We'd have to change everything, don't you? All our normal routines. But now
Yeah.
she's got this compatriot, James, who's like helping her fuck with everyone. Right. So then and part of it is that and I think that part of this where he's like, we could they can kind of play around with this. She then writes these Easter week section and then Easter Sunday, and these feel like crafted stories. This doesn't feel like the journal anymore that's been in here up to this point. And then, so in the point in this black notebook is penned a carbon copy of the short story, which he was supposed to write a straightforward review of these books, and he does not. Instead, he writes a short story called Blood on the Banana Leaves that is like just such a crippling, like this is exactly how some shitty white dude was writing about Africa at that point in time. You know it. Like it's so offensive and so like over the top offensive. Like was one of the parts I have marked here. I marked a bunch of sections from this where because it's just like this is very, very, very funny and strange to appear here. So where is it? Okay, so like But John, my John, it was only one little lipstick, one little red lipstick that I bought for the making of my thirsty lips more beautiful for you, my love. And when I was buying of it, I saw his cold blue eyes hot on my maiden thighs, and I was running, my love, back from the store to you, to my love, my lips red for you, John, my man. Like this is such over the top like parody.
If you
Um,
put an like accidental rhyme, let's just having fun. Just
this
throw
is
all the just throw all the shit in there. It's a
it's just
gumbo of bad ideas.
it's fucking sleep now, my noni. I will return after many years, but now I have a man's purpose. Do not stop me. I go to the city now to the gunmetal, writhing gray streets of the white man, and I find my brothers, and into their hands I will place the red snake of my hate, and together we will seek out the white man's lust and kill it, so that no longer will the banana trees bear alien fruit, and the soil of our raped country cry, and the dust of souls weep for rain. Aye, aye, scream the old women who are screaming constantly like a really poorly deployed Greek chorus. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, where are we? this, is the, this is the part that, like, yeah, so now we are in of like the Hall of Mirrors right here could be expanding like exponentially. Like, who is
Yeah.
James? What is happening? Where are we? This story is a joke. Is all of this just a big joke? Are we taking this too seriously, even though we're recognizing that it's funny? Is this all just like a big, big joke?
Well, this sounds like a point in Anna's career where this sounds like before the meetings with the people who want to make it into a
Can't
film.
be. Because of the
Can't
text of the
be.
book, it says that the Black Notebook has fulfilled its purpose. It's done the source,
Okay,
it's
right, right,
done
right.
the
Okay.
money. So now it has this.
Because the tone also changes. So I
Very, very much.
I mean, I would go so far as to say that it's a more masculine sound to it. Maybe like a stereotypically masculine sound, and I'm not really sure what I mean by that, but for a period when on 415 it starts with um she's gonna she writes like these little snippets as if she's, the young American keeping this journal, right? These like the Mambo number 5 of locations and women's that this American has stayed with or slept with. And then it has the little dinkus, and then it's like came to know the young American writer James Shafter. And I like even in the parts where it said like Anna, I had to go back because I'm like, is James Anna? Is Anna James? What the fuck is going on? Because even the tone is it's so different.
Yeah,
Like
it's
it's
super
like a
different.
completely different Anna.
And then in this part, I'm certain that this is like supposed to be what they turn into a journal. This part about Easter week and whatnot that includes
Yeah.
like her going to like a or the character going to a party and being like, "Spied my dear Harry at once." And I'm so fond of these tall, pale-browed, equine Englishmen, so noble. We talked under the meaningless din of the cocktail party. He suggested I do a play based on frontiers of war, a play that which should take no sides but emphasize the essential tragedy of the colonial situation, the tragedy of the whites. It is true, of course. What is poverty? What are hunger, malnutrition, homelessness, the pedestrian degradations? His word, how sensitive, how full of true sensibility are a certain type of Englishmen, far more intuitive than any woman, compared to the reality, the human reality of the white dilemma. And then she's like, ends with this Easter Sunday thing where he's saying like this symbolizes how the white man is trapped by history, dragged down by the animal mud of Africa. And she's like, break. I thought this was all a bit thick, but James said no, he'd swallow it. James turned out to be right, but unfortunately, my rare sensibility overcame me at the last moment, and I decided to keep my privacy. Rupert sent me a note to say he understood some experiences were too personal to print. So I believe that this is what she submits as like her journal to that literary journal who's like, give us a story, give us like what your journal is. So she writes a fake journal with
Okay.
James's like guidance or input, which is why it sounds so crazy because she would
Got it.
never talk like this. Like on some level, when she's saying who is Anna, who is Anna, I feel like I have a sense, even though this is so disparate and so discombobulated, of sort of who Anna is. It's not that. It's like maybe the sort of semiotics of it all. She is not that. That is not our Anna. That is a
No.
some sort of representation. of someone who would say that. And the fact that it's like all this like white oppression shit, this is so Trump circa 2025, allowing all the African refugees over here as long as they're white because they're being so put upon. Africa, this is, I mean, it's kind of crazy. Like how it sort of like butts up against those things.
Yeah, if you don't catch on that it's different, that it's not real. I mean, I that last right before that break of like I thought this all this was a bit thick, where she has when I left Harry, I walked home and reality touched me with her white wings. I walked in
Right?
little slow steps so as not to waste this and emphasis beautiful experience. And so to bed, bathed and clean to read The Imitation of Christ, which Harry had let me. I just have gross written
Yeah,
in
I
the
mean, this is
margin.
really intentionally poorly
Gross.
written, right?
It's gross.
But it is a notebook, and you're just putting shit into this notebook. This is
Right.
like some things that happened theoretically under the guise of we take this all at face value. The notebook is
Hmm.
there. She's putting things into it, including this sort of like literary prank they tried to pull when someone's like, "Send me what you're working on," and she's like, "Okay, here's some dumb shit, and are you gonna get away?" And they're like, "Yeah, we totally run that. That sounds great. Let's definitely publish this." And she's like, I can't go through with the joke. Like I
Yeah.
can't pull the trigger on this one.
Yeah.
It's too far.
And then you get those great reviews.
The reviews are so incredibly funny. Like
They're so funny.
they're amazing. Where are the working masses in this book? Where are the class consciousness fighters? They do not appear. I love that.
I like to, we detect Freudian influences.
That was
Mhm.
so good.
And it's just like I like several times I just have in the margin like then you write it, asshole. Like they're like she there's brave Anna Wolf writing this book, but these are all the things that she did wrong and how it could have been better. Like you get him next time, girl.
No,
Fuck
this
off.
author must learn from our.
We look at her work with an eager expectation, which is not justified. Like, that's
Yeah.
so harsh.
Like this isn't critiquing someone's work. You're just like saying how you would have done it better. That's not.
This does, though, again, just real quick. I think these are made up, and I think they're made up because they're dated 19 December 1956. There's a 50 August 1954, August 52. Again, this would then place this notebook around that 56 era if this is actually being written in there. However, how often is this book being reviewed? Is as if it's like a real book, like every 2 years by these random journals.
Once a year, yeah.
This feels like she's inventing these reviews
But
about
these are all like
Soviet
Soviet
Gazette.
journals.
what's
Yeah,
They're all related. They're all Soviet or like Communist Party related journals, right? So yeah,
yeah.
Soviet writing, Soviet Gazette. So
Soviet
like, I
Soviet
mean, they're
Journal
they're
for Literature
excited.
for Colonial Freedom.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it makes sense because it's just like, what else did the communists have going on? Oh, here's this like lady writer whose book really took off in England, and she's a communist. Let's claim some stake to it, or stake some claim some stake.
I think these are all made up. They're like her reflections on
Interesting.
the Soviet Party because we're about to go in the Red Notebook again where she's quit the Communist Party and it's like these people are frauds and assholes and are all insane. She's sort of this is her self-criticism or like
Disillusioned. Yeah. Uh,
yeah, like
not
that
taking incredulous, not taking it serious. I don't know. It's just absolutely just fiercely postmodern.
Yeah.
yeah, there's no ground. Yeah, Soviet Journal for Literature for Colonial Freedom. Come on. That's got to be a joke. So this also
And
like isn't all this just a rehearsal for the book? I could tie this into the Nathan
you
Fielder.
could.
I don't know. She could learn a lesson from pension, I guess.
You could learn a lesson from doing this on a simulator a few hundred times, getting those reps.
Or there's something unhealthy, even ambiguous in her writing. Let her learn from Mark Twain. His
Yes.
Yes.
wholesome humor is so dear to progressive readers. How to
Yeah.
make mankind laugh at what is already dead, backward, outmoded by history.
Let's see what. But it's super funny. But like, this book invites you to read it dead serious, and I don't think I'm starting to believe that it is absolutely the furthest thing from that. I
She's
mean,
playing
Tommy shoots himself in the face, and they're basically like, this motherfucker being blind is a pain in my ass. Like, he's constantly there hearing me.
He's the hearing.
If he lived, great. If he died,
God,
okay, but not this.
this is the worst.
This kid's an asshole.
He's so annoying.
Just like absolutely like coffin kicking a pigeon and people screaming and I don't know. I think I think she's having a lot of fun. She's serious but having fun.
Yeah, there's serious points to it, but I don't think this book is as like deadly serious in that.
No.
I think there's more weird things to focus on. So my line of the week is from 382. All the same, Anna thought, better for Marion to be a lush and a whole person. Better be a drunkard and bitter and truthful than sober. If the price of being sober is that she must be an awful, dripping, coy little girl, the tension had become so painful she found herself breaking it with, "What did Tommy want me to do?" Which is at least the thing. But I just love she's better to be a lush and a whole person than this like sober, annoying asshole writing fucking letters.
It's
Jesus Christ.
mine's on a three
Anyone?
mine's on yeah, mine's on 394 and it's the pigeon, the last breaths of the pigeon. And then it's dead, says the efficient man. The villain, recovering himself, says apologetically, but clearly determined to have no nonsense. I'm sorry, but it was an accident. I've never seen a pigeon before that didn't move out of the way. We all look with disapproval at this hardened kicker of pigeons.
Kicker pitches. I know exactly what song's opening this up. Uh,
Is it Kickin' Pigeons by Sponge?
no, but that would be funny. I did not think of that one.
If it's not, it
Oh,
should be.
I had a different one, but that should be it. I like that part too, where they're like, "That's the ticket." He says, "Call the coppers. They'll put you down for stealing a public pigeon, mister." And newsboys speak. I'm like, what, what is happening? This is the weirdest book on so many levels.
What about
All
you,
right.
Brian?
My line of the week is 370. I want to marry Jean. Well, I don't think it's going to be easy. Tommy won't let it be, even if Marion divorces you. She said she wouldn't divorce me. Give her time then.
Oh my God. Kicker of Elves was the song that I keep thinking of because like they're kicking a lot of elves. The elves being kicked. Ways, not pigeons, but anyways, if you're listening to this still, rate, review us. You can follow us on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. For next week, we up to the beginning of Free Women 4, which is page, I think, 482 or 482 is the last one. Yeah. So about 60 pages. Then we have a huge long section, by the way, to lead up to the Golden Notebook, which should be hopefully reveal a lot of truths, maybe. I don't know. Anyways, I've got nothing else. Anyone have any final words that you want to say before we go?
I'm just hoping that we're gonna see some women who are free.